So there's a lot of distraction, it seems, around the topics of celibacy and sexual orientation.
Correct.
Which draws, energy away from a focus on the other elements that you described.
That's right.
And I just kind of wish the church could come to terms on the subject of sexual orientation. We quit thinking so much about bodily functions and more about spiritual development. That's a different topic for another day. But in fact, I think we need to be cautious about not spending a lot of energy on those topics. If the focus now needs to be on reestablishing credibility and addressing the organizational and leadership issues, granting that there are many people in the church who are still leading and trying to do the right thing and trying to learn as they go and taking steps to get us the information we need and the resources we need.
Right. Let me respond to you in pieces, okay?
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely correct, but here's the thing. We don't have the time to say we're going to get to this first and that second. We're going to have to split up. You know, it's kind of like every time the guys robbed the bank, the one thing they do in order to get away is that they had to split up. So, you know, we need to, that's part of why what I'm saying is that the way I've laid it out as to we're dealing with different problems. You follow? Some of the problems we are addressing as effectively as we can. Insofar as it is pedophiles active in the church, we have been effective in addressing them. And I don't think, because we have all these other things that have come in, and everyone has swirled it and mushed it all together, we don't see the fact that when the bishops set up the office, what's the proper name? I call it the sex abuse office, but we have a different name, child protection, okay? That when the bishops established the child, that was absolutely spot on. It's effective, it's working, those people are doing their job, people are coming forward, and we can keep them going. We don't need to mess, we don't need to tinker with that too much. Do you follow? That's a problem that is ongoing. And that's why I'm saying underneath that, but I think it's kind of like in universities talk about writing across the curriculum. You can't just have the English department teaching writing or the writing department, but you know, the history department, the science department has to make sure they're also writing in, you know, reasonable ways and learning the conventions of writing, okay? So that you're reinforcing what the other department is teaching. This is where child protection is working. Now, religious education has to be brought in as the next piece to continue the work of child protection. Why? Because the child protection office can't keep running in to train the third graders and to go to the fourth graders. And we have this whole cadre of catechists who are there. Are you with me? So that this is where, and that we have to bring in the Catholic school personnel and the principals and all the other secondary, so that, in other words, we have a workforce. Our biggest workforce in the Roman Catholic Church are catechists. I was with 35,000 of them in the Southern California, 35,000 Roman Catholic catechists. They flew out 500 of us or thereabouts as speakers. Okay, so you know, when we're looking at that workforce, imagine 35,000 people helping us prevent child molestation. So we're putting those into place. Then we start to go through the rest. When I'm talking about the credibility of the bishops, that's another piece that needs to be attended to by them, and too sweet, very quickly. The other thing you said is about the sexuality. As long as we let people get away with saying that pedophiles are homosexuals, that's a lie. And we need to stop that lie in its tracks. For whatever reason, people are threatened by people whose orientation is not toward heterosexuality. I had a gay brother. I mean, you know, I don't have any problems with it. You know, that I loved him greatly. My brother is now passed away. He was the president of jazz at the Lincoln Center, a very accomplished man, former vice president of John F. Kennedy Center for Education. And so, you know, and a very active Roman Catholic. So when we start talking about homosexuals, and was a very principled man, you know, sure we have people on the make who are homosexual, but my goodness, have y'all checked out the folks on the make on the other side? You know, so I mean, you know, that's part of what we have to deal with regarding human sexuality. So I think we have to stop the lies about homosexuals. That's just scapegoating a group of people to excuse ourselves for not stopping them in our homes. You follow what I'm saying? When you catch the kid raping the cousin, that's when he goes into either juvie or goes into psychological treatment that gets dealt with. And we find these things in families. We let them off the hook, and then we wonder later how they wind up as pedophiles. Well, they were already when they were in our homes. So those are things. So when it comes to sexuality, which you also said, celibacy. We had this conversation at dinner last night, and I was reflecting with Father John. Those priests who are current priests, those guys who are currently deacons, whatever their state, whether married or celibate, that's permanent. That's the tradition of the Roman Catholic Church that goes back at least until the Council of Florence, which was in the 3rd century, Common Era. Okay? So here's the deal. When you're a deacon and you're ordained, if you're in a Roman Catholic community, that means you are one of two things. If you're already married, you will not be proceeding forward to priesthood. If you are single, you will be proceeding to priesthood as a celibate. Period. If you're in the Greek Orthodox community and you are ordained as a deacon, they stop and ask you, do you wish to be celibate or do you wish to be married? If you wish to be a bishop, that's a whole other conversation because celibacy is going to come back at you later. But if you wish to proceed as a married man and you are not married, you will not be ordained a deacon until such time as you are married, then you can come back for diaconate and go forward to priesthood. You follow? So the only thing that's going to change about celibacy, so I mean people have these notions, oh we're going to let him, he could say he could marry a priest. Well, actually he can't. It is too ingrained in the whole of the Christian tradition of the upper Orthodox Roman Catholic tradition. That's not going to happen. However, Francis could say tomorrow morning to every man in a seminary right now, you guys can marry, you're going to be our next wave of married clergy. They can go find wives, be married before they're ordained to deacons, we will have married clergy. Francis could look at every man right now who's married, who is a deacon, and say, you guys discern with your wives, it's going to change who you are, but tomorrow morning we will be allowing you to be ordained to the priesthood. We will have married clergy. Are you right? But the men who are already celibate, you're here for life. That's a done deal. It's not going to change unless you become laicized. That's the tradition. So, you know, that is part of the issue. Now, underneath all of that, and I'm not talking about clericalism, you all are going to have a segment on that. I mean, part of the problem of celibacy aligned with it is the power. And I do want to say this one thing about all of these issues, whether it's pedophilia, whether it's dealing with the other forms of sexual abuse and sexual harassment, as I've described it right now. All of it is about power. Rape is not about sex. Rape is about taking advantage of the vulnerable and wielding power. And again, the sadness of it is because of our absolute authority approach to life in church, it has made us a ripe place for abuse of power. And that is what you all will be talking about another time with someone else about clericalism in the church. But I appreciate what you're saying, but it's very important, you know, celibacy is not the issue. The issue is we have to deal with sexuality. We have to deal with people being responsible and accountable. And I think we have to unleash the forces we have. And one last comment to you. We really got to look at who's in the seminaries, who's training these young people in the seminaries. Some of those people really aren't healthy. And we need to clean ship. You know, I know that they did studies in seminaries. I mean, all the people that are so concerned about how you fold this and which way the cuff looks there, and at the same time these people can barely be compassionate, we need to deal with that. You know, we need to deal with people who can teach people to deal with people and to be compassionate toward them and understanding. One little hint about that. The young don't know that. Today is Palm Sunday. And the reason some of us know it is that God has already corrected us. And I've said this to someone. You know, if you've ever been corrected by God, you don't ever want to mess up again. And I'm really serious about that. And I'm saying that lightly, but I don't mean that in the slightest bit. This church is under correction. This is an absolute corrective for us. And until we acknowledge the fact that something went radically wrong about our understanding of power and authority in the church, where we did not feel it was a value to protect vulnerable people because we would lose power or cash, you know, I don't care if we go broke. Jesus didn't have too much. You know, we don't need these buildings. We lip service all that. Great that we have them. Sell the suckers. I mean, really. Maybe we will rediscover our true and genuine value in Christ. It's not about that. St. John of the Cross says, you know, no, the only real path to Christ is the cross. Well, we seem to think that the church was somehow or other not going to periodically undergo the cross. This is the cross. Here we are. And all of us as believers are going to have to go through it. And therein lies our hope. Because what we know about the cross is that there's resurrection. We're already beginning to resurrect. Leadership by laity is increasing. And I do say in all sincerity, I think we have to draw deeply on the skills of our women religious and also of those in leadership in religious communities of men. But in particular the women religious when it comes to the bishop. And that's not because I'm pushing anything other than the fact that they have some skills that the guys haven't taken time to develop yet. Amen. Amen. Let's give a great round of applause.